All right. I'd like to start off by saying Barakatah Yahawah, Bahashem, Yahawashi, Bahashem, Rachakudash. Welcome to another live lesson. Salakia. The name of this one is Yahawah is not the author of confusion. Now, we've been speaking about this from time to time, and Elder Yahawah yesterday sent me an article on the point that the book of Peter's, First Peter, Second Peter, was pretty much written to the Israelite foreigners. And I said, which I believe the first one to bring that out was Elder Yahawah, that even John Calvin himself, agrees or agreed with that. But then you have your naysayers, that say, no, that's not really, just talking to the Jews, it's talking to the Gentiles, and these particular verses in Peter's explains it, and this gives us a better understanding to show that it's talking about the actual Gentiles and not just the Jews that were in exile, blah 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 blah, right? And until Yahawashi comes back, you're gonna have these false prophets, you're gonna have these false teachers, you're gonna have these individuals, especially Esau, that's and Jake, that's gonna try to keep pushing the narrative that the other nations can be saved and they cannot. Now we're gonna go through this. Lord's will, it'll be edifying. But the first scripture I want to start off with is, because the Most High is not the author of confusion. Here it is, the Apostle Paul stated in Romans the 9th chapter that the Lord is only dealing with Israel. He broke it down to the least common denominator. He went down through the promises, through the service of the Lord, to the adoption, to everything, and said it was for the Israelites according to the flesh, right? Then he went so far as to go back to Abraham, and it's not just because they were children of Abraham, were they the seed, but the chosen seed was the seed of the promise that went through Isaac, and then it went from Isaac to Jacob. Now, why would the Most High, a God that loves all nations, why would he have a chosen people if he loves all nations? Why would he narrow it down just to one chosen people if he loves all nations? The point is that he doesn't. Then you're going to go from that and then say that the Apostle Paul, after he said all of this and broke it down beautifully, that the Lord is only dealing with the nation of Israel, went all the way down to Jacob and Esau to show the distinction between the promised seed and the not promised. Then he goes down further into around the 24th verse of Romans 9 and speaks about the Gentiles, and he references scriptures in the Old Testament that refer to the Israelites, because those Gentiles that he was talking about are Israelites. So how is it that the Lord is going to give one message and then give another message? Matter of fact, let's go real quick to Matthew before we get the first precept. Let's go to Matthew. Just precept that just came to mind. Right, Matthew chapter 10, verse 5. These 12, which are the 12 apostles, back then they were disciples, Yahawashi sent forth and commanded them, saying, Go not into the way of the Gentiles, and into any city of the Samaritans enter ye not. That has never changed. And as Elder Pastor mentioned, this is the Great Commission. Matthew 28, they call that the Great Commission. That was dealing with the same issue that this is dealing with. But at that point, now he's opened up to the Israelite foreigners, the ones that are scattered among the nations. And that's who the letter of Peter was written to. But go rather to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. Salakia. Okay, go rather to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. When you go to the Israelites, and as you go, preach saying the kingdom of heaven is at hand. To who? To the Israelites. That has never changed. 1 Corinthians 14:33, for the Most High is not the author of confusion, but of peace, as in all churches of the saints. All right, so the Lord is not the author of confusion. He's not going to say one thing and then do something totally different. You know, he doesn't change. Whatever he says is what, whatever he says is what he says. The word there is akatastasia, instability, a state of disorder, disturbance, confusion. Right, so the Most High is not unstable or unstable. The Lord is not in a state of disorder. He is not disturbed. He is not confused. He doesn't bring confusion. Okay, as far as what he want, the message that he wants. Now, will he stir up shit? Will he stir up disasters and all that? Of course, and that causes confusion. But as far as the message of the scriptures is concerned, he is not the author of confusion. Right now, let's jump down to the 40th verse. Let all things be done decently and in order. Why? Because the Most High is not the author of confusion. Now, when we go to 1 Peter, right? Because I put these in the description box. This individual here that put this together, he references certain individuals, right, that believe that the book 1 Peter was written to the Israelites and the Jews that were in exile, and they were absolutely correct. But then he says that there are others that disagree with that and say that it was open to the Gentiles. Then he goes on to give his opinion on it, and he says that he believes that this is talking about the Gentiles, and it's not. But the point here is that, let me see, we're going to read some of this other stuff here, but I want to get to this point here. In modern times, though, the consensus has shifted today. Most scholars understand 1 Peter to have been written to Gentile Christians, which it was not. It was Israelite foreigners. They do so primarily because of verses like 1 and 18, 1 Peter 1:18, and 4 and 3, but also because the region Peter addressed was largely Gentile territory. Yeah, and Israel would be scattered among the nations. But let's go to these two precepts that they try to use to tie in this to the other nations. So 1 Peter 1:18 says, for as much as you know that you were not redeemed with corruptible things as silver and gold from your vain conversation received by tradition from your fathers. And then, well, see, that proves that these are talking about Gentiles. No. What this is speaking about is you had Israelites that fell away. They left the law, statutes, commandments. They left that safe haven, so to speak. Then they went into, in this case, the Greek philosophy. Their sons, their daughters, the Israelites could not call themselves Jews. So if they couldn't call themselves Jews, what did they have to call themselves? They had to call themselves Greeks because they were being Hellenized. Now, if you couldn't circumcise your sons, if you couldn't keep high holy days, if you couldn't keep the Sabbath, what would you be keeping? You would be keeping the customs of the nations that you were conquered by. In this case, the Greeks. This is why you have something called Hellenization. Okay, today you have Americanization. Back then you had Romanization and Hellenization. So these Israelites were Hellenized, but they were Hellenized to the point where they lost their identity. Okay, they could not call themselves Israelites, so they had to call themselves Greeks. And that is the great mystery of the Gentiles. Now we're going to go to a couple of precepts to prove this, that this vain conversation is not talking about the Gentiles, like the actual Gentiles. It's talking about Israelites that left their customs. 1 Maccabee 1:10, and there came out of them a wicked root, Antiochus, surnamed Epiphanes. This is the devil that really put the screws to Jake back then. All right, when you do research on Antiochus Epiphanes, it goes into all of the wicked shit that he did to Israel, and eventually the Lord got his ass. Son of Antiochus the king, which was Antiochus III, that was his father, who had been an hostage at Rome. So Antiochus Epiphanes was a hostage, and I believe they switched him for his brother. You know, you got to go into the history. And he reigned in the 137th year of the kingdom of the Greeks. It says, in those days, during the time of this devil especially, there went there out of Israel wicked men. Now, what did these wicked men of Israel do? Who persuaded many, meaning they persuaded other Israelites, saying, let us go and make a covenant with the heathen that are round about us. So that's what they did. They made a covenant with the heathen that were round about them. For since we departed from them, we have had much sorrow. Right? So this device pleased them well. So they convinced a lot of these other wicked Israelites to follow the Hellenistic customs, to become Greeks. All right? And what do you think they taught their sons and their daughters? The same thing. What do you think when those children got old enough to have children, what do you think they taught their children? The same thing. So what is happening? You're having generation after generation that are receiving, that are receiving the conversation of their forefathers based off of what? Those Greek customs. So that is the vain conversation, because that conversation leads to what? To destruction. Let's go real quick to the book of, that's in Jeremiah, is it? Because, this scripture used to be broken down wrong, and brothers still break it down the wrong way. Jeremiah 16:19. O Yahawah Bashem Yahushai, my strength and my fortress and my refuge. In the day of affliction, the Gentiles, they said this was the actual Gentiles. It's not. It's talking about the Israelite foreigners. The Gentiles shall come unto thee from the ends of the earth and shall say, surely our fathers have inherited lies. These are the vain conversations that these Israelites were having, that were being called Gentiles. This is what the Apostle Peter was addressing. Vanity, vain. And things wherein there is no profit. Why? Because that is what got us pretty much kicked out of the land, following the customs of the nations. What you remember, in Leviticus 20, the Lord said not to do. So going back to 1 Maccabees 1 and 12, so this device pleased them well. So what do you think happened? That conversation took place. They convinced the people, and they kept teaching their children and their children and children's children, all the way up to the time when Yahawah came on the scene, which was approximately 200 years in the future. And by that point, these children that were the descendants of the first ones that became Hellenized, they were far removed from being Israelites. They were Israelites, but they didn't know. The only thing they knew was what they received from their fathers through that vain conversation, which was the Hellenization, the Greek customs. They spoke Greek. They worshiped Greek idols. They ate Greek food, so on and so forth. Then certain of the people were so forward they're hearing that they went to the king, who gave them license to do after the ordinances of the heathen. Right, whatever it was that the heathen were doing, they got license to do so. And they also went as far as whereupon they built a place of exercise at Jerusalem, which was a place, was a gymnasium, which the word gym or gymnos means naked, according to the customs of the heathen, see, and made themselves uncircumcised. This is twofold: uncircumcised in the mind, but also uncircumcised in the flesh, because they sewed the foreskin, the foreskin back on their penis. And that was what? That was called epispasm. Brother almost had it right. I was listening to the apostle and the bishops on the live, and the brother said something close, but it was really epispasm. All right, when you look it up, he was close, but it's epispasm. It says, it made themselves uncircumcised and forsook the holy covenant and joined themselves to the heathen and were sold to do mischief. Now, when they forsook the holy covenant, they did what? They took on the customs of the heathen, in this case the Greeks. So what do you think they taught their sons and daughters? And what do you think that their sons and daughters taught their sons and daughters generations in the future? Vain conversation from their fathers. That's what this is talking about. We're going to go back to it. to our First Peter. Okay. Second Maccabees 6:3, the coming in of this mischief was sore and grievous to the people. For the temple was filled with riot and reveling by the Gentiles, the actual heathen, who dallied with harlots and had to do with women within the circuit of the holy places, and beside that brought in things that were not lawful, right? And this is what you call temple prostitution, all right? And this is what all nations did, and this is what the Lord forbade. This is why that man was killed for having sex with that heathen woman, which Phinehas put to death. It wasn't because he was having sex with her that the Lord had him killed, or Phinehas killed him. It's because he was doing it in the name of their God. When you go back to these different nations, they have different rituals that they do, sexual rituals. Some are orgies, some are, bestiality, Moism, man on woman, that, adultery, So it was all kind of foul shit going on. The altar also was filled with profane things which the law forbiddeth. So these are the vain conversations that they're receiving from their fathers, the things that Jake was doing. This right here was a heathen doing it, but Jake followed in those footsteps. Neither was it lawful for a man to keep Sabbath days. So what did they have to keep? Greek days or ancient feasts. That's why they kept the Greek feasts, or to profess themselves at all to be a Jew. So what would they have to call themselves? They couldn't call themselves a Jew. They will have to call themselves Greeks. So these Israelites were being called Greeks, and eventually they lost that identity. So this is the reason why the Apostle Paul mentioned, because the Apostle Paul was a very learned man, and he knew about this history. And that's why he said there's no difference between the Jew or the Greek, because they are both Israelites. But one speaks Hebrew, the other one speaks Greek. You see? And the Israelite foreigners that were partakers of this were brought back into the fold. This is why the scriptures call it the mystery of the Gentiles, because, there's a lot of people to this day that don't understand that concept. All right, now, let's go back here and then we'll go to the next point. 1 Peter 1:18, for as much as you know that you were not redeemed with corruptible things as silver and gold from your vain conversation received by tradition of your fathers. That vain conversation is what? The Israelites pushing that Hellenized mindset on their children. The word vain is mataios, devoid of force, truth, success, result, useless, of no purpose. See? Why? Because that does not lead to salvation. That leads to destruction. Now, the other one is conversation. We're going to get that real quick. The word is anastrophe, which is manner of life, conduct, behavior, deportment. And then that was their manner of life. It was vain, void, useless. And then tradition of your fathers is patroparadotos. Now, patro is where you get the word father. All right? Patroparadotos. Handed down from one's fathers or ancestors. So what were they handing down? Were they handing down lollipops? Were they handing down, gyros? No, they were handing down the Greek customs from one generation to the next, to the next, to the next. So by the time Yahawah came on the scene, Jake was pickled in that Hellenization, and that's why the Apostle Paul went to them to teach the ones of them that would be of the elect. Now, the next point they made was 1 Peter 4:3, for the time past of our life may suffice us to have wrought the will of the Gentiles, when we walked in lasciviousness, lust, excess of wine, revelings, banquetings, and abominable idolatries. And they're trying to say that this is proof that it's talking about the heathen. No, this is exactly what Jake was doing. That's why I said that many of Israel consented unto this. When we go back to First Maccabees, it says, there's another one. Where is that? Right here, 43. Yea, many also of the Israelites consented to his religion, and sacrificed unto idols, and profaned the Sabbath. That's what this is talking about. They were pickled in that Gentile mindset, in those Gentile customs. Everything that that Jake did back then, they were doing it to the Greek customs. Nothing, to the Lord, but the Lord had a door of mercy open up to them because of who? Because of Abraham. And that's why he set up the Apostle Paul to go teach these Israelite foreigners. All right? When we walked in lasciviousness, lust, excess of wine, reveling, banquetings, and abominable idolatries. Remember, that's what Jake did here. Let us go to the heathen. Let us make a league with them since we departed, And it said that if this device pleased them well. This is what this is talking about. You see? But if you don't know that history, you're going to get trapped up. And I'm pretty sure that some of these guys that say this, they know that history. Because in order for you to be a scholar, you have to know that. You have to know the Apocrypha. You have to know that history. They know the history of Israel being Hellenized and some of them not, being able to, or some of them, consenting to the Greek religion. They know about that history, but they're not going to talk about that. Why? Because that dismantles that false Christian teaching. So now we're going to go to a couple of these to show you this is dealing with idol worship. Psalms 106:34, they did not destroy the nations concerning whom the Lord commanded them. This goes back to Israel when they were taking over the land of Canaan. But were mingled among the heathen and and learned their works. Same thing they did with the Greeks. That's why they had the excess of wine and lasciviousness and all this madness. It says, and they served their idols, which were what? A snare unto them, a trap. And what was a trap? That the Lord would kick us out of the land if we did these things. Yea, they sacrificed their sons and their daughters unto devils, and shed innocent blood, even the blood of their sons and of their daughters. In the case of the Greeks, they offered their sons and their daughters to those religions, whom they sacrifice, just like Jake does that today in the entertainment world, whom they sacrifice unto the idols of Canaan. Idols. Remember that. And the what? The land was polluted with blood. That's why the Lord said, don't do that, because this is the reason that I'm kicking these nations out. And if you do the same thing, you're going to be kicked out also. Thus were they defiled with their own works, unclean. This is why they were, looked at as, they were looked at as uncircumcised, heathens, And thus were they defiled with their own works, and went a-whoring with their own inventions. That's dealing with the idol worship. Therefore was the wrath of the Lord kindled against his people, insomuch that he abhorred his own inheritance, meaning he avoided them. When he took us out the land, he avoided us. Why? Because his face is there. His presence is there. That's where the Lord he keeps his eye on that place. But then he turned his eye when he kicked us out. And he gave them to the hand of the heathen, and they hated them, and they that hated them ruled over them. Now, the other scripture I have is here, Isaiah 65:2. I have spread out my hands all the day unto a rebellious people, which walketh in a way that was not good, after their own thoughts. Because the first verse is talking about the Israelite foreigners. I am sort of them that ask not for me, right? Because who were the Israelite foreigners asking for? The name of their other gods. In so much that the Apostle Paul was stirred, and his spirit was stirred when he saw all them idols in Athens. And what did he do? He went to them and explained to them who that God is. Yahawah. All right? I am fond of them that sought me not. I said, behold, unto a nation that was not called by my name. Right? Because the Israelites at that time were not being, whatever captivity Jake went into, that they immersed themselves into that nations. But in all captivities, pretty much, Jake knew who they were. The Greek captivity, the ones that gave into the Greek customs, eventually their sons and their daughters down the line lost that identity. Just like today, when we didn't know we were Israelites, until the Lord woke us up. So verse 2, I have spread out my hands all the day unto a rebellious people, which walketh in a way that is not good, after their own thoughts, a people that provoketh me to anger continually to my face, that sacrificeth in gods and burden burneth incense upon altars of brick for what? For their idols, which remain among the graves and lodge in the monuments, which eat swine's flesh, and broth of abominable things is in their vessels. They were also doing that during the Greek Empire, which say, stand by thyself, come not near to me, for I am holier than thou. These are a smoke in my nose, a fire that burneth all the day long. And you can see that in these jakes in the churches too. Them jakes in the churches today, you best believe that they were definitely, those that were Hellenized. It says, behold, it is written before me, I will not keep silence, but I will recompense into their bosom. Your iniquities and the iniquities of your fathers together, saith the Lord, which have burned incense upon the mountains, to these idols, and blasphemy upon the hills. Therefore will I measure their former work into their bosom. That's why Jake fell and was in that condition, that degenerate condition. Let's go from there to the book of Ezekiel. Ezekiel 36. And we're going to read the 17th and 18th verse and then jump down. It says, Son of man, when the house of Israel dwelt in their own land, they defiled it by their own way and by their doings. Their way was before me as the uncleanness of a removed woman. Yeah, so Jake became unclean. Wherefore I poured my fury upon them for the blood that they had shed upon the land, and for the what? Their idols, wherewith they had what? Polluted it. And that's what Jake was doing during the time of the Hellenistic era. Now let's jump down to you can read the rest of this chapter, excellent chapter. Let's jump down to the 22nd verse. Therefore say unto the house of Israel, thus saith the Lord power, I do not this for your sakes, O house of Israel, but for mine holy name's sake. That's the only reason why the Lord is doing it. And for the great promise that he made to Abraham, for his holy name's sake, which you have profaned among the heathen, whither you went. And I will sanctify my great name, which was profaned among the heathen, which you have profaned in the midst of them. And the heathen shall know that I am the Lord Yahawah Bashem Yahushai, saith the Lord power, when I shall be sanctified in you before their eyes. Russia included, Gog included. Get it? Got it? Good. For I will take you from among the heathen, and gather you out of all countries, and will bring you into your own land. Then will I sprinkle clean water upon you, and you shall be clean from all your filthiness, and from all your idols will I cleanse you. A new heart also will I give you, and a new spirit will I put within you, and I will take away the stony heart out of your flesh, and will give you an heart of flesh. And the Russians are not going to come against us. Okay, because we're going to be fully, righteous. Thy people shall be all righteous. And I will put my spirit within you and cause you to walk in my statutes, and you shall keep my judgments and do them. Now, one more I have to dispel this madness is 1 Corinthians 12 and 2. You know that you were Gentiles, past tense. Why? Because now when you received the word, you Israelite foreigners that were being called uncircumcised, now you came back to the commonwealth of Israel, which belongs only to Israel. Carried away unto these dumb idols, even as you were led. This is how you fell away and became Gentiles, by worshiping them dumb idols. That's how you fell away. You were carried into that. Now the Lord is bringing you back by way of remembrance. All right? You were carried away into these dumb idols, even as you were led. Now the Lord is bringing you back. So when we go back to 1 Peter 4 and 3, for the time past of our life may suffice us to have wrought the will of the Gentiles, meaning our people, the ones that were Hellenized, were following behind the heathens. They were doing after their customs. And the main thing was what? The idolatry. And that led to other worse crimes. When we walked in lasciviousness, lust, excess of wine, revelings, banquetings, and abominable idolatries. All right, reveling is that partying. Banqueting is pretty much the same thing. Matter of fact, let's look up the word banquetings. Because you also have the word riot, which I believe the word riot either goes with revelings or banquetings. potos, drinking, carousing. See, and that's what you do in these clubs, right? You know, people don't realize like the Studio 54. You know, that was straight up, definitely, you know, a thing of the past, a blast from the past. The Greek and Roman, the Greco-Roman world, you know, revisited. All right. Now, what I want to do is go to back here to this, you know, letter or this thing that this guy put together, and I want to read this part here. But before I read that, it says, was First Peter written to Jews or Gentiles? It was written to Jews who were in a Gentile state of mind, if you want to say it that way. Why? The answer matters more than you think. And this guy, Derek DeMars, this was written in September 28, 2019. Now, you can read through it. I put this in the description box. Scholars have long been divided over the question of First Peter's intended audience. But it seems the majority of classical interpreters took the phrase exiles dispersed abroad at face value. But how else are you supposed to take it? Huh? How else are you supposed to take it? How can the heathens that are in their own land be exiles? An exile means someone that is not in their land, that was ripped out of their land. Check this out. Exile, exiling, transitive verb, to banish or expel from one's own country or home. So how else are you supposed to take the word exile? All right, and you see here in the beginning, it says here, it says, First Peter, an exile's guide to living. Peter, an apostle of Yahawah, to those who are elect, exiles of the dispersion in Pontus, Galatia, Cappadocia, Asia, and Bithynia, according to the foreknowledge of the Most High the Father, in the sanctification of the Spirit, for obedience to Yahawah and for the sprinkling with his blood. May grace and peace be multiplied to you. That's 1 Peter 1 and 2. These are exiles, dispersed. Come on, man. Abroad. Matter of fact, let me get this, put this here. Matter of fact, no, I already got that. It says exiles dispersed abroad at face value, and it is face value. Seeing a Jewish audience to be in view, and that is exactly what it is. But they did not know that they were Jews. They were Hellenized. They were Greeks. They were calling themselves Greeks because they could not call themselves Israelites. John Calvin, which is the head of that whole Protestant, you know, apologist movement, John Calvin is a good representative when he writes in his commentary on 1 Peter. Now listen to what he said. They who think that all the godly are thus called because they are strangers in the world and are advancing towards the celestial country are much mistaken. And this mistake is evident from the word dispersion, which immediately follows. For this can apply only to the Jews. This was John Calvin's, you know, understanding of 1 Peter. There's a reference here. When you go to the reference, it brings you to another reference, and that reference leads you to here. 1 Peter 1 and 2, it says, Peter, an apostle of Yahawah, to the strangers scattered throughout Pontus, Galatia, Cappadocia, Asia, and Bithynia. Then you have it here in this is Latin. Yep. And right here it says dispersi, which is dispersion. Tenants. Okay. Elect according to the foreknowledge of the Father, the Most High the Father, through sanctification of the Spirit unto obedience and sprinkling of the blood of Yahawah, grace unto you and peace be multiplied. Now I highlighted something here. Here you go. To the sojourners. A sojourner is one that, you know, you could have a heathen that sojourns, but you could also have Israelites that sojourn. Like if an Israelite is born in Ephesus and he comes to Jerusalem to keep the Passover, he is a sojourner there. He wasn't born there. So he would not, even though he's an Israelite and he has rights, he would not have the same rights that a person that was living there, that was born there, has. This is why when you had the table set up, where the widows of Israel were being, handed out, goods to help them, because their husbands has passed away. There was a prejudice going on between the Jews, the widows of the Jews, and the widows of the Hellenistas, or the Israelite, the Greek-speaking Israelites. You see, why? Because they said, look, man, these women, let the children first be filled, right? Did not they do what Yahawah did to that woman? That woman was an Israelite. They did the same exact thing during that time that Yahawah said to that woman, let the children first be filled. Why? Because it wasn't time for her. She's an Israelite. It wasn't time for them to receive this truth yet. The Israelite form, it wasn't open to them. Why? Because it wasn't open to them at that time, because the word had to first go to who? To Judah. Judah. So to the sojourners, they who think that all the godly are thus called, because they are strangers in the world, this is what we just read, and are advancing towards the celestial country, are much mistaken. And this mistake is evident from the word dispersion, which immediately follows. For this can apply only to the Jews, not only because they were banished from their own country and scattered here and there, but also because they had been driven out of that land which had been promised to them by the Lord as a perpetual inheritance. And what was the driving out of that land? That was because of their idol worship. He indeed afterwards calls all the faithful sojourners, because they are pilgrims on the earth. But the reason here is different. They were sojourners because they had been dispersed. And these pilgrims are also Israelites. Some in Pontus, some in Galatia, some in Bithynia. It is nothing strange that he designed this epistle more especially for the Jews, and not the JOOSs, the real ones, the real Israelites. For he knew that he was appointed in particular manner their apostle, meaning the apostle Paul. As Paul teaches us in Galatians 2:8, in the countries he enumerates, he includes the whole of Asia Minor from Euxine to Cappadocia. And that's talking about the Israelites. But you're going to have those that are going to say, nope, that's not talking about that. That's talking about this. That's talking about the other. Well, we're going to find out when the Lord comes back. All right, so I want to go from there back to 1 Peter, but we're going to go to the first verse. And there's another, what was that? I was looking at something earlier, and they actually gave a bunch of precepts, and they even went to the Apocrypha. But I don't remember what it was. Was it this? Just bear with me 1 second. And they had pretty much cut themselves, but then he's saying, nope. See, right here. This is a group of scriptures that he went to. But let's hit this first. 1 Peter 1:1. Peter, an apostle of Yahawah, to the strangers scattered throughout Pontus, Galatia, Cappadocia, and Asia and Bithynia, right? Which Ephesus is included in that. Strangers, the word is parapidemos. Parapidemos is one who comes from a foreign country into a city or land to reside there by the sides of the native, right? This is an Israelite foreigner that came from another country. And even the Hellenistas, the Alexandrian Jews, the Cyrenian Jews, when they came there, they were also pilgrims. They were also sojourners. But then you had those that didn't know that they were Israelites, that were starting to learn. And some of them that were better established could have, been keeping the Passover. There's a lot of vast history concerning Israel and this whole Hellenization. A stranger sojourning in a strange place, a foreigner. Reference to having his native country. Okay, so that's going into something else. So that's the sojourners. And the Old Testament speaks about Israel sojourning. It speaks about, matter of fact, let me get one real quick precept on that. Let's go to Leviticus 25. Just to show you that there's times in the scriptures where it references strangers and it's talking about the Israelites. Leviticus 25 and 35. And if thy brother be waxing poor and falling in decay with thee, Nate, Bishop Nathaniel, when you're going to cut that check, man. And if thy brother be waxing poor and falling in decay with thee, then thou shalt relieve him, yea, though he be a stranger. Who, your brother? What? What, a stranger? Or a sojourner, that he may live with thee. All right? And this word stranger here is the word gar, right? Which the word gar simply means sojourner. And the word sojourner is what? Thawashab. And thawashab is the other word besides bun nakar that actually means an actual stranger. But in this case, it's talking about an Israelite. That's where you have to know how to qualify it. Sojourner, stranger. All right. This was also applied to the actual heathens. Okay. But sometimes it applies to Israel, just like the word bun nakar. I say about 95% of the time applies to the heathens, but about 5% of the times it applies to Israel, such as in the case of 1 Kings, the 8th chapter, 2 Chronicles, the 6th chapter, where it speaks about the strangers that call upon the Lord, that are not of thy people Israel. Those are the Israelites that fell away, the ones that became a non-people. The ones that the Lord said, in the place where it was said unto them, you are not my people, there shall be said unto them, you are the sons of the living power. All right, so going back to 1 Peter 1:1, we're going to look up the word scattered. And then we're going to get a couple of those precepts that we saw. Scattered. Diaspora, or diaspora. A scattering dispersion of Israelites dispersed among foreign nations. Come on, man. Why? Because that was a part of the curse that would happen to us if we disobeyed. And this is just one out of many scriptures that prove that that was a curse that would befall us. Deuteronomy 28 and 64. And the Lord shall scatter thee among all people. Scatter. Let's go to the word scattered. Pawatazah. To scatter, be dispersed. Diaspora. To be scattered. You get the idea. Matter of fact, I just want to just see something. We'll scroll down here. There you go. Diasperae. This is the Greek. That's diaspora. Okay. And the Lord shall scatter thee among all people from the one end of the earth even unto the other. And there thou shalt serve other gods which neither thou nor thy fathers have known, even wood and stone. This is what, brought us down. All right. Now, let's go back. So we got that. Now let's get a couple of these precepts that they mentioned. We're not going to get all of them. We're going to get James 1:1, because James also addresses saying that. How come they're not saying that this is applies to the heathens? James, the servant of the Most High and of the Lord Yahawah Mashiach, to the 12 tribes which are scattered abroad greeting. This is the same thing that the Apostle Peter said, but he was addressing the Israelite foreigners that were scattered. James is addressing the actual ones that knew that they were Israelites. All right, now there's another one. Here in 2 Maccabees 1:27, gather those together that are scattered from us, deliver them that serve among the heathen, look upon them that are despised and abhorred of the heathens and also of the Israelites that were in Jerusalem, and let the heathen know that thou art our power. Man, the Lord's going to do a mighty work. That's why he says, I will work a work in your day that you will not believe, though it be told you. All right? And that's pretty much the main points. Now, that whole, because this First Peter, right? The book of First Peter is one of the main sources that they use for replacement theology supersessionism. That's one of their strongholds, which we dispelled that myth today. And you have others that we've dispelled over the years and are still doing through the spirit and power of Yahawah. But that whole replacement theology supersessionism was set up by a dude by the name of Roy Eckert back in 1972. Roy Eckert coined the phrase theological supersessionism in 1972 to describe the church's belief that it has replaced the Jewish people or the Israelite people or old Israel as a new Israel. No, you are wrong. Because Romans 9, it says, according to the flesh who are Israelites. Roy Eckert coined the phrase theological supersessionism to describe this era of ecclesial self-definition, defining it as a church's view that it is the new Israel that has taken the place allegedly of the old Israel, the Israelite people. It says Jewish there. 1972. So you are wrong. All right? All that stuff is madness. You taking away and you adding to the scriptures. The Lord's going to destroy you. So with that, I pray that you brothers and few sisters have been edified. Till the next time I say, Shalom.